"Lily, you need to tell me what's going on," he said, lowering his voice. She looked at him, her usual confidence replaced with something else, something he hadn't seen before. Fear. "Jason, you don't understand," she said. "I was never supposed to be found. If they saw me, it means they've been looking." Jason swallowed hard. Who had been looking for her. And why? Before he could ask, a sleek black SUV turned onto their street. Its windows were tinted, moving slowly, too slowly. Lily stiffened. Without warning, she grabbed Jason's arm and pulled him into a narrow alleyway, pressing him against the wall. "Stay quiet," she whispered. Jason barely breathed as the SUV passed. He caught a glimpse of the same man from earlier, scanning the sidewalk, his sharp eyes searching for her. The moment the vehicle disappeared around the corner, Lily grabbed Jason's wrist and started walking again, faster this time. "Okay, that was definitely not normal," Jason muttered. "Lily, what is happening?" She exhaled. "Remember when I said I didn't need the money?" Jason nodded. "I wasn't lying." She hesitated. "I left a life behind, a very complicated one." Jason frowned. "What kind of life?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "You were right about me. I'm not just some broke girl sitting alone in a cafe. I used to be someone else, someone with a lot of money, a lot of expectations, and a lot of people who didn't want me to walk away." Jason's head spun. He had joked about her not belonging in his world, but now it was real. She wasn't just pretending to be someone else for a day. She had been pretending from the moment he met her. Before he could respond, a phone rang. Not Jason's. Lily stiffened and pulled a small, sleek phone from her pocket. One Jason hadn't even seen her carry before. She stared at the screen. No name, just a number. A long one. International. Jason saw something flicker across her face. Fear, hesitation. Then, after a beat, she pressed *decline*. Jason exhaled. "Okay, I think I deserve some real answers now." Lily looked up at him. "You do. But first, we need to disappear." Jason's heart raced as he followed Lily through the twisting back streets of the city. She moved with purpose, as if she already had an escape plan in mind. Whoever was looking for her wasn't just some old acquaintance. This was serious, and Jason had somehow been pulled right into the middle of it. They slipped into a dimly lit parking garage, Lily finally slowing her pace. She glanced around before pulling Jason into the shadows between two parked cars. She exhaled, her hands trembling just slightly as she ran them through her hair. "Lily," Jason said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I need the truth. No. She looked up at him, eyes full of something unreadable. "I was supposed to take over a business empire," she admitted. "A massive one. My family built it over generations, and when I turned 18, I was next in line. But I didn't want it. I didn't want any of it." Jason frowned. "So you just left?" She nodded. "I disappeared. Walked away from everything. My father didn't take it well. Neither did the people who depended on me to keep the empire going. They tried to bring me back, but I made sure they couldn't find me. Until today." Jason's mind reeled. He had spent all day thinking Lily was just playing along with his ridiculous bet. But the truth was far bigger than anything he could have imagined. She wasn't just rich, she was the heir to something enormous. And now, whoever was looking for her wanted her back. A sharp sound echoed through the garage, footsteps. Lily tensed, and Jason felt his stomach drop. A voice cut through the silence. "Lillian, you've had your fun." Jason turned to see the man from earlier standing a few feet away, flanked by two others in dark suits. He wasn't angry. He wasn't rushing toward them. He was calm. Calm. Like he already knew how this would end. Lily squared her shoulders. "I told you, I'm not coming back." The man sighed. "It's not up to you anymore." Jason stepped in front of her, heart pounding. "She's not going anywhere with you." The man barely acknowledged him. "You must be the boyfriend," he smirked. "Cute." Lily grabbed Jason's hand. "Don't," she whispered. You don't know who you're dealing with. But Jason didn't move. She's not a possession. She can decide for herself. The man studied Jason for a moment, then chuckled. That's sweet, but you don't understand. His eyes flickered to Lily. Your father has already decided for you. Jason turned to Lily, waiting for her response. But to his shock, she was already pulling something from her pocket, something small and metallic. A key. She tossed it to the man. The man took a step closer, lowering his voice. You don't understand what you stepped into. Jordan stayed still, her mind already working through her options. She didn't know exactly what this was yet, but she knew one thing for sure. She was in deep, and they weren't going to let her walk away. The car rolled to a slow stop at the end of the street, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. Jordan didn't have to see them to know they weren't here to help. The man in front of her straightened slightly, a sign that whoever had just arrived outranked even him. She glanced sideways, taking in the position of the others. The men she had taken down were still on the ground, too shaken to move, but the rest of them, his crew, were getting restless. She could feel it in the way their feet shifted, the way their hands hovered near their pockets. They were waiting for something, or someone. The back door of the car opened, and a man stepped out. Older, sharper. His suit crisp, his movements controlled. He wasn't dressed like the others, and that told Jordan everything she needed to know. He wasn't street muscle. He was the kind of person who made decisions from a distance, the one people like these answered to. He took his time walking toward them, his polished shoes clicking softly against the pavement. When he finally stopped, his eyes settled on her with a quiet curiosity, like he was trying to figure her out. Then, without looking away, he spoke. Is this her? The man in charge nodded. She's FBI. For a brief second, the older man's expression flickered, not with surprise, but something else. Recognition, like he already knew. Jordan caught it immediately. This wasn't random. They had been expecting her. She didn't react, but her mind was already racing. Had they known who she was before the attack, or had something tipped them off after? Either way, the fact that this man wasn't caught off guard meant that she had stepped into something much bigger than a street altercation. The older man gave her a slow, measured look. Then he smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You should have walked away. Jordan returned the smile, just as cold. That's not really my thing. The man sighed, shaking his head. That's unfortunate. The streetlight above them flickered slightly. A small detail, but it made the moment feel heavier, like the night itself was holding its breath. Then, without warning, the sound of distant sirens pierced the air. Jordan didn't react, but the others did. The men stiffened, their heads turning toward the sound. The leader looked at the older man for direction, but he didn't move. He just kept watching Jordan, his expression unreadable. And then, in a calm, almost amused voice, he said, You called them, didn't you? Jordan just smiled. But inside, she knew things were about to get a whole lot more complicated. The sirens grew louder, their wailing cutting through the tense night air. Jordan kept her expression neutral, but inside, she was watching everything, every shift in stance, every nervous glance exchanged between the men. They had expected to handle her quietly, to make her disappear without a trace. Now, with law enforcement closing in, their entire plan was unraveling. The older man's smile faded just slightly. You're smarter than they gave you credit for, he murmured. His voice was calm, but she could see the way his fingers twitched at his side, an almost imperceptible tell that he wasn't as relaxed as he wanted her to believe. Jordan tilted her head. You should have done your homework. I always have a backup plan. The leader of the group took a small step closer, his voice low. You think the police are gonna fix this? He chuckled darkly. They don't even know what they're walking into. Jordan held his gaze. He was right. She hadn't had time to tell them everything. She had only managed to send out a distress call, one that would get officers here fast but without any context. They were walking into a situation blind, and if these men were half as powerful as they seemed, that meant this wasn't over. Not yet. The older man checked his watch, then sighed. Looks like we're out of time. He turned slightly to his men, giving a single nod, and just like that, they moved. Jordan braced herself, expecting them to attack, but instead, the leader and his crew backed away, smooth, controlled, like this was just another part of their plan. The older man was already turning toward the waiting car. "We'll be in touch," he said over his shoulder. Jordan frowned. They weren't running in fear. They were retreating with purpose. That meant something was still in motion. Then it hit her. She turned quickly, eyes scanning the street, searching for what she had missed. And then, her stomach dropped. "Tell them he can keep his empire," she said. "I have something better." Jason watched as the man caught the key, expression unreadable. He studied Lily for a long moment before finally nodding. Without another word, he turned and walked away, his men following behind. Jason felt his whole body relax, but his mind was spinning. What just happened? Lily smiled at him, the first real smile he had seen all day. "I gave them what they wanted, control." Jason frowned. "But doesn't that mean that I just walked away from billions of dollars?" She shrugged. "Yeah, but money was never what I wanted." Jason exhaled. "So, what do you want?" Lily looked at him, something unreadable in her expression. Then she took his hand and squeezed it. "This." Jason had started the day thinking he was paying for a fake girlfriend. Instead, he had helped a billionaire disappear for real. And somehow, in the middle of it all, he had found something worth more than money. Jason sat beside Lily on the rooftop of an old parking garage, the city lights stretching out before them. The night was quiet, almost peaceful, as if the chaos of the last few hours had never happened. He still couldn't believe any of it, how a simple bet had turned into something so much bigger. Lily leaned back on her hands, staring at the sky. "You know, I thought they'd fight harder." Jason smirked. "Maybe they finally realized they can't control you." She chuckled. "Maybe. Or maybe they just wanted to see if I'd break." She glanced at him. "But I didn't." Jason studied her face. All day, he had seen different sides of her, the playful, the confident, the guarded. But right now, she looked free. "So, what happens now?" he asked. Lily smiled, as if she had been waiting for that question. "I don't know. And for the first time, I think I'm okay with that." Jason nodded. "And you're really not going back?" She shook her head. "That life isn't mine anymore. I spent so long trying to escape it, I almost forgot what it felt like to just be to make my own choices, to live without expectations." She nudged him. "And you helped me remember that." Jason felt a warmth spread through him. He had only wanted to prove a point to his friends, but somewhere along the way, he had ended up proving something to himself, that connections weren't about money, power, or appearances. They were about people. Lily stretched her arms above her head. "So, boyfriend for a day, I guess this is where we say goodbye." Jason hesitated, then shook his head. "Nah." She raised an eyebrow. "Nah." He shrugged. "We don't have to say goodbye. I mean, if you're figuring out your life, you might need someone around to annoy you." Lily laughed, her eyes twinkling. "You offering?" Jason grinned. "Only if you promise to keep pretending I'm the interesting one in this story." Lily shook her head with a smirk. "Deal." They sat there for a while, the city humming below them, the weight of the day finally settling. Jason had started this thinking he was just playing a game, but in the end he had found something real. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them had to pretend. Jason sighed as he counted the few crumpled bills in his hand. Barely enough to cover his lunch for the next few days, let alone impress anyone. But today wasn't about impressing someone, it was about a bet. His friends, always teasing him for being single, had dared him to find a girl willing to be his girlfriend for a day. It was supposed to be a joke, a harmless challenge. But now, standing outside a quiet cafe, he felt ridiculous even thinking about it. Then he saw her. She sat alone at a corner table, quietly stirring her coffee, her clothes simple and worn. Something about her felt different, like she didn't belong in this busy, noisy world. There was a calmness in her eyes, but also a weight, like she had seen more than most people her age should. She looked poor, maybe even homeless. Jason hesitated. Asking a random girl to pretend to be his girlfriend was already awkward enough. But asking someone who clearly had bigger struggles, it felt wrong. Yet, before he could walk away, she looked up. Their eyes met, and she gave him a small, knowing smile. "Need something?" she asked, her voice soft but confident. Jason swallowed hard. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but," he sighed, "might as well get it over with. I need a girlfriend for a day. Just pretend I can pay you." She raised an eyebrow, setting her cup down. "You'll pay me?" "Yeah, just for a few hours. Nothing weird, just." He ran a hand through his hair, feeling ridiculous. "Just pretend to like me. Walk around, laugh at my jokes. That kind of thing." For a moment, she just stared at him. Then, to his surprise, she grinned. "All right," she said. "I'm in." Jason let out a breath of relief and handed her the money. She took it without even looking at the amount, tucking it into her pocket like it meant nothing. He had no idea that the girl sitting across from him wasn't just some struggling nobody. She was a billionaire, and today was about to become the most unforgettable day of his life. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this girl. She was too calm, too confident for someone who looked like she was struggling. Most people would have hesitated, asked questions, maybe even laughed at the absurd request. But she had agreed instantly, like she wasn't the least bit surprised by the offer. Still, he pushed the thought aside. Maybe she just really needed the money. He wasn't about to judge. They left the cafe and started walking through the busy streets. Jason made sure to act the part, casually throwing his arm around her shoulders. It felt weird at first, but she played along effortlessly. She laughed at his lame jokes, nudged him playfully, and even called him cute just loud enough for a passing couple to hear. His friends, who had been watching from a distance, were losing their minds. Jason smirked, giving them a little wave, but he couldn't help glancing at the girl beside him. Who was she really? "So," he said, deciding to dig a little, "you never told me your name." She looked at him, amused. "Do I need one?" He raised an eyebrow. Yeah. Kind of important if we're pretending to be a couple." She hummed, as if considering it. "All right, call me Lily." Jason narrowed his eyes. "Is that your real name?" She smirked. "Does it matter?" He wasn't sure how to respond to that. Instead, he focused on the way she carried herself. There was something about her posture, the way she walked, like she was used to people looking at her, but not in the way he had first assumed. Not with pity, but with admiration. They passed by a high-end clothing store, and for a split second, Jason caught something strange. The way Lily's eyes flickered toward the mannequins in the window, not with longing, but recognition. Like she had worn clothes like that before, like she belonged to that world. But before he could ask, she tugged him toward an ice cream stand. "Come on, boyfriend for a day. Buy me something sweet." Jason chuckled, shaking off his suspicions. Maybe he was overthinking things. Maybe Lily was just really good at pretending. But deep down, he had a feeling that by the end of the day, she wouldn't be the only one pretending. Jason handed Lily a cone with 2 scoops of chocolate ice cream, watching as she took a slow bite. She closed her eyes for a second, as if savoring it, and for the first time since meeting her, she looked different. Not guarded, not playful, just lost in the moment. "You act like you haven't had ice cream before," Jason teased. Lily opened her eyes and smirked. "Maybe I haven't had it like this." "Like this?" She shrugged. "Standing on the street, laughing with someone. Just normal." Jason tilted his head. That was an odd thing to say. He wanted to ask what she meant, but before he could, Lily pointed at a bench nearby. "Come on, let's sit."